To Radical Anarchist Revolution Radio. I'm your host, Tasha Heath of Southern Nevada Watchdogs, and I'm here with my co-host, Nevada Cop Block's Kelly Patterson. We are local activists bringing you real talk every other Monday about local Las Vegas and Nevada issues concerning freedom, injustice, and liberty from government oppression. This week is our first radio show, and we will be discussing a few different things. We're really excited to be doing this show with Nonpartisan Liberty for All, and I'm really excited to be partnering up with Kelly Patterson on this. So I hope everybody bears with us while we get all the kinks out and sticks around. But we will be talking about a few things on our show this week. We will be introducing ourselves and what we do in activism and how we got to the points that we are in our activism and our beliefs now after a few years into it. And just about what we've done and why we're here with the show and what our goals are. So our second half will be about the cops here in Las Vegas. We have Kelly Patterson of Nevada Cop Block, who focuses on the injustices that happen, that Metro brings upon us, and how they...
Many injustices.
Yes, and how they get away with murder, literally.
Tiny badges don't grant extra rights.
That's right. So,
she even spontaneously just bursts out with that because it's so bad.
Exactly. Yeah. So, Kelly, tell our audience a little bit about your activism and how you got to where you are today and with what you're doing today.
Okay, so as Tasha mentioned, I am with Cop Block, and specifically Nevada Cop Block. Cop Block advocates for police accountability, exposes corruption within the police or the injustice system. And I work as the editor on the national site, and I also am the founder of the Nevada Cop Block site. And I originally got involved in activism here all the way back in 2008. I had just come back I was driving a truck for 5 years, so I was basically living on the road, even though I grew up here in Las Vegas. So I've been in Vegas. Even though I've traveled a lot, I've been in Vegas my whole life. But I came back and kind of started getting involved in stuff. And I met Charles Johnson, who is a writer, and a lot of anarchists know him. He has a pretty well-known blog. But I started working with him, and we, along with some other people, started the Anarchist Cafe, which was a weekly meeting that we have, and people come together. It's partly social and it's partly educational, but it's also a way of organizing stuff. So we started organizing stuff through the A Cafe. One of the first things that we organized was the return of Food Not Bombs here in Las Vegas, which had a history of being in Las Vegas since about 2003, but was kind of inactive at that point because the government actually made it illegal to share food with people in public. And there were a lot of people, including Gail Sacco and her son, Joe.
We love Gail.
Yeah.
Gail is amazing.
Yeah. So they actually got arrested, and some of them got cited for sharing food with people at Circle Park. And after those things were thrown out, they came up with other ways to try to keep Food Not Bombs from sharing food with people. One of those things was they would do permits or require permits. And the official thing at the time was that you had to have a permit if you had more than 25 people in the park. So what they would do is they would come out and count everybody in the park. So it didn't matter if those people were with you or if it was a family playing on the swings at the playground. They would just count, and if there's 25 people, then they'd see you need a permit. So that was one of their first things or one of the things that they tried to do for harassment after that law about being able to feed people was overturned. And then when that was unsuccessful, they actually just closed Circle Park entirely. And because of that, some of the people, partly because just all the effort that was expended to fight the law, people were just kind of fatigued. But also because the park had been closed, there wasn't an active Food Not Bombs. There were still people that had been involved in Food Not Bombs that were still sharing food, including Gail, but they were not doing it as a group. So one of the first things we did was track down some of those people that were still doing it and get the group back together and get more people involved. So we restarted Food Not Bombs here in Las Vegas. And since the summer of 2008, it's been active ever since. So we're actually at 7 years.
Nice.
So.
Yeah, I have participated in just a couple of Food Not Bombs events, and it is really, it's enlightening, and it just, it's good to do stuff like that. A lot of it's not just about the food, it's about, giving the attention and human contact that the homeless kind of don't get. They're kind of like treated as invisibles all around town. And
well, that's one of the things when you have people thanking you a lot, that's one of the things they thank you for, is because that's actually part of Food Not Bombs, is that we go out and we spend time with them. That's why we call it picnics and say it's sharing food rather than feeding people, because we look at it as like we're welcoming them into a group. We're not putting ourselves above them. We're just sharing stuff with them. And that's one of the things, just companionship in general and being treated like a human.
Right.
Because so many people are like down on people because you're homeless. And even a lot of, like 90% probably of the people that are homeless are temporarily homeless. Something happened.
Yeah.
They didn't have something to fall back on. So now, they're homeless now, but 3 weeks from now they might not be when they find a job.
Yeah, they just need a little helping hand, and like we were seeing earlier at Food Not Bombs today, you never know what you're going to do or how you're going to react to a situation until you're put into it. So you can't really judge. Even the whole drinking thing, people judge a lot of homeless for turning to drugs and drinking, but if you had to sleep on a concrete bed that was freezing ass cold every night, I think you'd be drinking and drugging.
Well, that's another one of the myths. It's not a complete myth, because there are people that get in trouble with addictions and end up homeless, but a lot of the people that are drinking and doing drugs started that because they're homeless. They didn't become homeless because they started that. It's one of those things when you have nothing else. They even had studies where they've connected stress to drug addiction, where they've taken rats and they had like one group that wasn't stressed and they had another group that they stressed out, and then they gave them the option of drugs. And the ones that weren't stressed out were almost close to not doing it at all. It was there was a huge gap between that. So it's a lot of times it's like people get in bad situations and then it's their coping skills to do drugs.
Right.
And you're also bored because you're out there all day and you got nothing to do. So,
Yeah. Well, I do love Food Not Bombs. It's a great group, and I hope to be participating more often. It's a really good thing that you guys do, and I'm happy that I get the chance to be a part of it once in a while.
When you're there, homeless people always ask, "Where's that cute little girl?" When you're not there.
Yeah, right. So, what else do you do, Kelly? Mr. Kelly, what's going on? What have you done?
Well,
what brought you to this point? Let us know.
The bus, usually a bike, but one of the things is through working with the homeless people, I got a little bit involved in, a decent amount involved in police activism stuff even before Cop Block existed, because you see the way homeless people are mistreated by the cops. Sometimes it's this misguided idea that they will, if they harass homeless people enough, they'll go away. The problem is they have nowhere to go or they wouldn't be homeless. So that's not really going to work.
It's really sad the way our system is built to continue to keep the person down. You know, if you have money, you can get yourself out of the situation. Yeah. But if you are already struggling, it just keeps on oppressing you even worse, where you can't get out of the situation, and it piles on top of what you're already dealing with. So I've seen them where they throw away their basket of stuff, and it's just like, how could you even live with yourself throwing away? That's all they have.
Yeah, usually that is literally all they have. And I've seen where they come into like in a camp, where usually the case with homeless camps is they find somewhere out of the way and set up camp there so that nobody will bother them. But in the process, they're not bothering anybody else, because their whole point of being there is to not draw attention. They're trying to be left alone. But at some point, they get found. And what happens is the police go in and they'll give them like 20 minutes to get everything they own. So they're just scrambling around to get like what's most important and what they can actually get in that amount of time. And they'll actually have a front end loader, like a bulldozer, just like pick it up and push it into a giant dumpster. And people lose their IDs, which, you can't get government assistance if you don't have IDs. And if you're living on the streets, you're going to try to survive off of whatever you can get. So it's one of those things. And they don't have the $20 to pay for an ID once they lose their ID. And just about anything you need to get into, you have to have an ID at this point.
Yeah, so you can't get a job or try to do anything without it these days.
They have an unofficial policy, obviously, but Metro actually has a policy that any opportunity they have to cite or arrest a homeless person, they will. And they actually go around. They'll give them tickets for jaywalking within a residential neighborhood. They'll give them tickets for loitering because they're standing near a building, and they're not actually a threat to it. They're just within, this is their legal ability, so they can do it.
Right, and also it happens to where they can't pay the ticket, then it goes to warrant, and then next time they can take them in.
Yeah, and part of that, the actual original reason that they started that, the justification for it was, if they finally do something bad, like really bad, like they, really harm somebody, now they've got a record so they can put them away for real time and they won't be like a first-time offender. But the problem with that is it's a really tiny percentage of people that actually do something that way, that, serious. And now they've got this list, they've got this criminal record on their ID. And so if they go and try to find a job and they do a background check, they're not getting that job. So now they're making it that much more likely that they're going to stay homeless. And because the homeless people don't have the money, a lot of the stuff, anything they get a citation for, does end up going into a warrant. And the cops don't mind that because that gives them the excuse to mess with homeless people.
Right.
So it's really, in a lot of ways, it's control. In a lot of ways, it's this misguided attempt to burn them out, basically. Just to, okay, if we keep hassling with them, they'll go to LA or something. But, that doesn't, most of them, it doesn't work out. It's like people are here for a reason. And they're here because they have no other option. So the thing is, you see a lot of the way that the police interact with homeless people. You see the way that it's a lot of it is simple bullying. And so I started to get involved with some of that. And around that time, which was 2009, the Motorhome Diaries came through town. And it had Pete Iyer, Adamo Freeman, who wasn't actually Adamo Freeman yet, but he was going by a different name at that time. And another person who I actually forgot his name right now. Jason Talley. Sorry. I'm not really good with names, so if I don't talk to somebody for a week, I'll forget their name. But, and people are always reminding me of my name, which is very lucky because I'd probably forget my own name. But so they came through, and that was the first time I met them, and it was kind of a short meeting. I didn't really see them much. It was like a couple hours, and at the time, I think at the time I wasn't even on Facebook, so I wasn't really aware of a lot of online activism, stuff like the Free State Project. I was actually aware of the Free State Project, the original idea for it, but I wasn't aware of what they were doing in New Hampshire.
Yeah, I like the idea of the Free State Project. I would like to have something like that, on an island with people that I like. But
well, the first version of it that I saw was the libertarian version, which is we go to a town and then we take over the government and pass laws that fit us.
Yeah. I kind of fell for that whole libertarian thing for a moment there.
Yeah. So the advantage to the New Hampshire thing is they have a anarchist wing of it, who it's just, let's go take over this area and then we'll, break all the laws or get rid of all the laws by
non-compliance.
Right. Yeah, by not complying. So I started getting involved a lot, and that's around the time that I started writing. So at the same time I was getting involved, that's how I got on Facebook originally. I was trying to promote the stuff that I was writing. You
self-promoter, you.
Right. So that's when I started getting involved with a lot of the groups that Pete and Adamo were involved with. And I started learning a lot about anarchism and the actual. I had started before that with Charles about before I always kind of considered myself an anarchist, but it was more of a philosophical thing. It wasn't something that I thought could be a real option. So I started getting involved in practical anarchy where you could actually live in an anarchist society. So that's when I started getting really involved with Pete and Adamo and all the different projects they were doing. So the next time they came through with what was called Liberty on Tour, and that was in 2010. So I met them then, and then we hung out for a week and got to the point where I considered them friends, actual friends. And right at that time is when Cop Block started. Adamo had first started it, and it was basically the original. He would see an outrageous police case, and he would call up that police department and just record it on YouTube. That's how it actually started originally. So
that's kind of cool.
Yeah, so I was involved in Cop Block, but we didn't have an official chapter here in Las Vegas. I was trying to get that started, but it was hard to get other people involved, and it was usually just me out there filming. So I was kind of trying to recruit people so that we could start one, but we hadn't actually started. And then in December of 2011, they murdered Stanley Gibson, they being the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, and specifically Jesus Arevalo. And I had known Stanley Gibson in high school. He was somebody that was a friend of mine. I knew him, we played sports together, so I knew him mostly through that. And that was kind of where I just said, okay, fuck it, I'm just going to start one. I'm going to start a Cop Block group here. So I started Nevada Cop Block. And the weird thing about it was I'd been waiting all this time for people to get involved so I could start a chapter. And as soon as I started the chapter, then people started getting involved. So I was...
If you build it, they will come.
Right. Yeah, I was doing it backwards, apparently.
Didn't you ever watch the movie, Kelly? Gosh.
Right. I'm sorry. We need more cornfields here so that I know all these things. But so we started doing monthly protests. We first started in about April of 2013. And prior to that, they had the big thing where everybody up there in Mansfield up there in New Hampshire. I forget which town it was. But so they had gotten arrested for chalking, so that we had a few chalk protests before that through Cop Block. And so, so it was in Manchester, New Hampshire. I remember now.
Thanks to a little elf in the room.
Right? Yeah, we need cue cards in here anyway. But so they had gotten arrested, and it was Manchester 8, actually. I remember now for sure. now that I know the name, except the last little part of it. But so we had done a few chalk protests, and that was something that we found out was like really easy to do, and it was really not really disruptive, but it got the message out. And so we started doing that, and we were doing monthly protests, and it evolved into what was called Second Saturdays, because we did it on every second Saturday of the month. And that was part of, we were trying to make it easy for people to remember when it was happening.
That's some good marketing.
Right. So, yeah, the sledgehammer effect, the sledgehammer method. But so we started doing that, and what happened in August of 2013 is Metro was tired of getting criticized, and they decided they were going to do something about it, so they arrested us. And that was something that got a lot of attention around town. And actually, unfortunately for them, it actually brought more attention to the protests, or than the protests had ever do, to like the issues that we were advocating for, like against police brutality, the history of the Las Vegas police accountability, which is nothing. They literally have never had any cop put in jail or even gone on trial and been charged for shooting somebody in Las Vegas. So they, well, the one thing is they bring up a technicality, and what happened is there was two cops, and I don't remember exactly what year this was. I think it was in the 90s. It was either in the 90s or the early 2000s. But so what they did is they were out drinking at Mr. B's, which is where all the cops used to go, and get drunk and then drive home, and then come back the next day and get people tickets for DWIs. So they were doing that. They were sitting there getting drunk, and then one of them had a great idea that they should go out and shoot some people. And they went out to a Latino neighborhood, and I believe they were doing a block party, but they found a bunch of people in the street, and they did essentially a drive-by shooting. And what happened is one of them went home and started getting scared that they were going to get caught. And he called his dad up, who was a retired cop. So he had a lot of pull because, he'd been in the police department. Now his son's on the police department. So his dad already knew a bunch of people. And he asked his dad basically, like, what should I do? And his dad told him, set up the other guy. And so he's the guy that actually did the shooting. And there's a lot of evidence that came out in that. But the thing is, like, when people from Metro bring this up, they try to bring up, like, Metro did something for accountability. The thing about it is, when they did the investigation, Metro allowed this guy to go and have his truck cleaned. And they also, when the testimony is really horrible. It's not like if they would have pressed him on his testimony, he would have had to admit that he did it, or at least it would have been obvious.
Well, they have to back the blue line, so,
Yeah. So even though the person that was shot by his gun, and when you do they do those, the gunpowder residue tests where you can tell who shot stuff.
Yeah.
Like that indicated like he was the one that shot. And it was also shot out the driver's side of the window. But the cop story basically was the other guy grabbed his gun and reached across him and shot. So like if they would have pressed him on the story, it would have fell apart because it was a horrible story. And instead they let him clean up his truck. So what happened is he called up and confessed and said, well, but I wasn't the one that did it. It was the other guy who's actually in prison right now. But the guy who actually did the shooting is free.
That's insanity.
And they, kind of facilitated him setting the other guy up. So even then, they didn't do a good investigation. So their one technical time that somebody went on trial for that is really does
kind
more
of
damage to them. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so that's the thing is, when they fired Jesus Arevalo, he was the first one to ever be fired, and he wasn't even really punished when he was fired because they gave him the disability pay.
Yeah, they made sure to wait till his disability pay was going to kick in, right? Or something like that.
Right. They waited. He got approved for disability. And Chris Collins, who is the head of the
Police protection.
the police union here in Las Vegas, was on the committee that approved him getting a disability and didn't recuse himself, which, like, that right there is a conflict of interest.
It's all a conflict of interest. It's a total, gang. People are right.
But so he got approved for that the week before he got fired. And they were supposedly investigating for 2 years, so he got 2 years of paid vacation before that. And then when he got fired, and the thing about it is, it's not like Social Security where you're not allowed to work at all. He's getting, just under $30,000 a year for disability, and he's just not allowed to work as a cop now. So
he can go get a regular job and still get that $30,000 a year.
Yeah, so wherever he works, he'll get $30,000 on top of that.
Are you serious?
Yeah, so it's like they gave him a bonus. Like they gave him a reward for that,
Yeah, you shot somebody. Here you go.
Yeah.
Here's your check. Cha-ching.
In which they actually did in the Eric Scott case. The two of the three cops, which they probably would have given it to the third cop, but he got fired for selling a gun to a felon.
But maybe for our listeners, tell them a little bit about Eric Scott and what that case is.
So Eric Scott is the case that, even if people don't know him by name, a lot of people know as the person who was shot at Costco here in Las Vegas, out in Summerlin. He had gone in and he was looking for a water bottle. And he had something, I guess he bought a cooler for it. And he was trying to make sure they would fit within this cooler that he had. So he started taking him out of the packages and he was putting them in the cooler. And the security, it caused a little bit of a commotion. So the security guards came out to watch him to make sure he wasn't like just destroying stuff or stealing something. And while he was leaning over to get the water bottle, he had a concealed weapon on him and it showed. And he was legally allowed to carry. He had a concealed carry permit and everything. But apparently Costco policy is that you're not allowed to have a gun there. So the security guard came up and told him he would have to leave or go put his gun in the car. And he had a little bit of an argument with him. Basically, he was like telling him, well, it's my right to carry. I have a concealed carry permit. But obviously, if you're in a private property, they're allowed to tell you that you're not allowed on there, even if you're legally allowed to have it. So what happened is they went and they called a 911 call, and you can actually look this up on YouTube. The 911 call is there, and told them that they had a person with a gun there, and they made it sound like way worse than it was. And then when Metro sent cops down, they had 4 cops come. When they came down, they told the store to have everybody clear out, so they told them all to walk out. Well, they say that he was high on painkillers, and there's a lot of dispute of that. There was painkillers in his system because he had an injury. But they used that as they had they went and got his medical records and everything and made it out like he was a drug addict when they released everything. So they made it up like it was way worse than it actually was. And that's one of the things Metro does is they smear the people that they killed.
They blame the victim.
Yeah. So that's the first thing they do is they release their whole entire criminal history or any kind of, like he was on drugs, he was doing prescription drugs. Well, what really happened is he was just walking out of the store with everyone else. And as he was walking out, the security guard that had called pointed him out to William Washer, who was the person that actually killed him. And what happened is they had 3 different people there, and they were all barking commands at him, but they were doing different commands. So it was contradictory stuff, and he was really confused, like who he should listen to. They're telling him, like, put the gun down and don't touch the gun, and all these different contradictory things. And according to Bill Scott, who is Eric Scott's father, they mistook a cell phone that he had in his hand for a gun, which I don't know if I even give him that much credit for the doubt. You know, it's
cell phones are not the shape of a gun.
Yeah.
They don't even look anything like it. I'd never buy that bullshit line. It's crazy. Like,
Yeah.
it's completely different. The size, the shape, everything, the weight, everything's completely different.
Yeah, so that's the thing is I tend to think that's more like a convenient excuse than what really happened. And they gave 2 of the 3 people that murdered Eric Scott awards as police officers of the year.
Are you serious?
Award for bravery.
Wow.
And what they actually did is William Osser shot Eric Scott in the chest, and that shot was bad enough that he was dead. It was like a mortal wound. He wouldn't have survived anyway. But the point of what happened is he fell down, and as he's laying on the ground, the other 2 cops unloaded their gun on him. Damn. And if somebody's already shot and they're laying on the ground,
They're obviously not a threat.
Yeah, they're not somebody that's going to do anything. I mean, maybe if they were rolling around or something, you could maybe say they were going to get up, but from what I've heard a description of it, and they said that when the paramedics got there, they had to hold his chest together. There was such a big hole.
Ugh.
So I don't see that they would have thought that was a threat. I think they just, they're all trigger happy.
Didn't they keep saying that they were going to release the security video footage, but they never have?
That was the other.
We got some background music. Whoop, whoop.
Yeah. Yeah, that's our random dance party sound. When you hear that, you were supposed to start dancing.
Break time, dance time.
But so that's the other thing that they did is one of the things they did is the paramedics, when they picked up Eric Scott, they have like a list of, this was the shape of the body and this is on the body and this is part of that's for property. So stuff doesn't get stolen. You have like a list of what was on the person that you picked up and took to the hospital. So if they wake up 10 hours later and their gold watch is gone, you can say, well, it was there when we took you out of the ambulance, or it wasn't there when we got you. So when they picked him up, they had put that he had a gun in its holster on his belt. And the Metro's first story out was that he had a gun out and was pointing it at them, and that's why they shot him. So that's 2 problems that came up later, because Metro has evidence pictures of a gun at the scene. And what happened is they followed the ambulance to the hospital, and one of the police took that gun, brought it back, and put it down like as if he had it in his hand.
No way.
Yeah.
That's what happens in Las Vegas. It's every day.
Yeah. So the problem, though,
Shiny badges don't grant extra rights.
See? Yeah, now she's going, man. But so they had pictures of it in evidence, and the only way they could explain that was to say that he had 2 guns. So he had another gun that the ambulance found. So they actually went to his house, and Bill Scott has recordings of the phone calls to his brother-in-law, or Eric Scott's brother-in-law, the brother of his wife, it's Eric Scott's brother, because they were living together at the time. So it was actually Eric Scott and his brother were living in the house. And there's a thing where if somebody is killed and they're the only ones living in the house, the Metro goes to secure their property, which I think usually doesn't actually happen. But they use that as the excuse to go into his house. But you can hear on the videos, guys don't need to do that because I live there, so his stuff doesn't need to be secured. But they were adamant, no, we have to go by and secure his property. So what they did is they broke into his house without his brother's permission and found a gun. And then they took that and put that with his body so that they could say he had 2 guns.
Damn.
And it's actually not the first time they've done something like that, because when they killed Trayvon Cole, they killed him. He was on his knees in the bathroom. They bought a little bit of pot from him, and they made him out to be this giant, big drug dealer. And Brian Yant, who's a 3-time killer here in Las Vegas, he went and found a guy who had the same name as Trayvon Cole, but had a really long violent history on criminal record. But Brian Yant went, and it wasn't an accident. He purposely went and found somebody else with the same name, submitted that for the warrant to get a no-knock warrant. And then he went, and they had a TV crew with them because they were going to start a reality show, which is something that almost everybody with a badge in Vegas seems like they're starting a reality show.
Right. We got the new DA reality show coming to Las Vegas soon, which is insanity to me. And it's going to like show so not real truth. I wish we could somehow like bombard that.
I think that's part of it, as far as like the DA.
Wow, way to make up stuff.
And the one that they had for the constables, and then you have the other one. They have the Las Vegas jail, I think, and cops is always here. I think the city actually tries to encourage them to come and do stuff in Vegas because we have such a bad reputation. They want to fix it and make it, we can put this in here and it'll be edited so everything looks like in our favor.
They do, and they're also, I was sitting in a meeting once at City Council, they want, like, to compete with LA and the movie industry and TV industry using Las Vegas to film and stuff like that, so.
So Dave was actually arrested on cops.
No, that is not what that sign said.
Well, we're having a problem in our communication system at the moment. So.
The napkins and permanent marker.
Right now, we have one of those technical difficulty things with the guy with the alcohol in his hand.
So, finish your story about Eric Scott, if you would.
So with Trayvon Cole, what happened is they came to her house. Well, they shot him in front of his pregnant wife, who was 9 months pregnant at the time. He was kneeling in the bathroom, and what he was actually doing was trying to dump the pot down the toilet. And so they claim he'd had a furtive movement, which means nothing really. It just means cops say that when they would shoot people. It's one of those he reached for my gun kind of things.
Right.
It's really prominent in Vegas because that's
resisting arrest.
Always what they use. Yeah. But so the next day they came to his wife's house. It was actually his girlfriend, but they came to her mother's house where she was staying after he got murdered. And they stopped her brother downstairs. And they called to her house and told her, basically, you can either allow us to search the house, or we can take your brother to jail. So part of with that,
she just saw him murdered, so she's scared.
She just saw, the father of her children, unborn child, I guess you would say.
Unless it was twins.
Right. I don't know for sure if it was twins, but I don't think so. But she just saw, the father of her unborn child murdered in front of her. So, if they take her brother to jail, she doesn't know if he's coming back, I don't know if that's the case, but you could very easily, like that would be something I would think, So obviously she allowed them to go and search, and what they were doing is they were searching to try to find a gun, and they actually told her that, we're trying to find a gun. So they wanted to be able to say he had a gun.
Yeah.
So it's not a new thing for Metro to manufacture evidence.
No, not at all. And they keep doing so. And it's like they don't even care. They know that they're getting away with all this. They're very well aware of what they're getting away with. When you stop and ask the cops on the street, hey, What do you think about this? Do you think that there's a war on you guys? Do you think that it's not fair that you're not being held accountable? They just act like they don't know, but they know.
Yeah, that's part of the thing. It's not just that Metro doesn't punish people and doesn't hold them accountable. It's not just inaction. It's not like they don't.
Right.
That's the extent.
Criminals are held accountable all
But what they do is they actively work to try and prevent that from happening.
Right, they do.
So it's not even that they just don't care. They're actively trying to cover shit up.
Right.
And that just makes it so much worse. And it is, if you're a cop and you're driving around and you know if you kill somebody, you're going to get away with it. And you get out there and you're having a bad day or something and somebody gives you a hard time and you're pissed off and you feel like, man, I want to kill this guy. Like, what's to stop you from actually doing that?
Right, because we know they don't have morals, so obviously it's not those stopping them.
I know that there are Metro cops. I mean, there are psychos. There are cops in general across the country. But I know there are people that are psychotic, and it's, that's the dream job. You get to shoot at people. So if you're one of those people, then obviously that's a job you're going to seek out, knowing that you can kill somebody and get away with it. But even the kind of regular person who just gets really pissed off, it's like, if you know you can get away with murder, what's going to stop you from trying to murder somebody? And there's no consequences. There's no chance that there ever will be consequences. And it's, with Metro, they don't even get fired. That's a new thing.
They get a raise.
So, yeah.
They get a paid vacation for life.
Or if you're Brian Yant, who has murdered 3 people, including Trayvon Cole, then they hired him with the union to be the advisor for cops that shoot people. And it's like you couldn't find anybody in Metro that hadn't shot somebody.
Well, they did that on purpose, probably. How to get away with murder 101.
Well, that's it. He has experience with covering up murders. Yeah. So he's the guy to advise them. But you would think, even just from a PR standpoint, they'd be like, we probably shouldn't use this guy.
Right? Exactly, yeah. You'd think that they would at least want to show the appearance of some justice and the appearance of, having some accountability and wanting to make a difference and change their ways. But they never do. They don't even try.
Yeah, so the thing is, right after I got arrested, then I came back from Austin, where I'd gone for the Police Accountability Summit, and I got out of jail the day before that flight, the night before, and I left that morning. I almost overslept, as a matter of fact. That was like, I was worried when I was in jail the whole time if I was going to get out in time, and then I almost overslept. But so I went to National Jury Rights Day, and that's where I met the lovely Tasha.
That was like, what, I think it was 2013, because we've known each other for at least a couple of years now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad that, we got involved and do some of the same stuff, because it's been awesome.
Right.
Yeah, I've learned a lot from you and the guys, around Food Not Bombs and Cop Block and A Cafe.
Taught us all a lot. How to be awesome.
Yeah, 2013 was fun. I had just started, actually, pretty much being an activist, because in 2011 is when I got, involved with Ron Paul campaign and started doing that, kind of trying to change the system from within, kind of activism, which I found out eventually doesn't really work. You can't really change it within. You have to stand on the outside and stand up and say no more. But it took me a little bit longer than some to realize it, but with the help of Kelly.
I always had faith in you.
Yes, he kept trying to tell me I was wasting my time. But I had some hope.
Yeah.
But I never was just like a one-issue person. Like, even though I liked Ron Paul and whatnot, I think that's what I can appreciate from going that route is I learned so much, and my eyes were open to so much going on around us, especially here locally, that, it led me to get involved in what I am in now. And it also led me to meet the great people in Las Vegas. I hate that people call our city so flaky, because I have met some of the most amazing people ever in my life, like true friends. I could call you anytime, or like Cindy Lake and all my friends pretty much. So I really have met a good group of people through politics and activism. Now it's more just activism and trying to go about it a different way. But it did get me to see that, on the local level is where we need to fight, and where we have a chance to try to fight things. And that's why I made Southern Nevada Watchdogs along with Melissa Letourneau in 2013. We decided to start watching the city and county commission meetings here in Las Vegas, and we would go there and try to fight for anything impeding on your personal liberties or your money. And one big one that we fought together with Nevada Cop Block was the More Cops tax, which we all got to fight that off. I think, what was it, like 4 or 5 times? Do you remember?
It was about a 9-month thing with all the meetings, but they had like 4 votes, I think. Yeah, it was a continuation of meetings after meetings, and then finally they had 4 actual votes on it. And the last one it was even like shenanigans, because what they would do is, first of all, when they take the vote, they would schedule the meeting to start at 10 o'clock, and then it would go until like 4 o'clock, and they wouldn't schedule the vote until 2 or 3 o'clock. So you'd get there at 10 in the morning ready to go, and then you'd sit through all this nonsense. They gave some old people out in Highlands Springs, I think it's called, whatever the area over there where they have all the
where they segregate the old people.
Right. Yeah, they got walls to keep the old people in. But it was like a neighborhood watch group, but the thing was like, we found 3 people who left their garage doors open, and we went and told them to close it, It was like, that was what they were praising them for. So you would sit through all that nonsense.
They were proclamations and stuff, yeah.
And then the other thing was like, they would say, okay, we're going to have it on the schedule this time, and then you would get there, and it's like, oh, we're not going to vote this time, till next time.
Yeah, they completely were distracting us. We held it together, though. Like, we got 400 signatures. Kelly and a few of us here in town band together, different groups, and we had good showings for public comment and to kind of, hold them off. But in November, I think it was November, we voted for a new sheriff, and part of what he actually ran on was like that he was against the More Cops tax at the time. And then this year, now that he's in, here he is saying, could you give me some of that money? I want it now.
His first thing.
Right. But so we did a few things at county and city. We tried to fight off the drones. Nevada was looked at as being one of the 6 national drone testing sites. And if you don't know, we are already pretty highly embedded with the drone projects, because out at Creech Air Force Base, which is about an hour outside of Las Vegas, Nevada, that is where they operate the drones that go into other countries such as Libya and Iraq and all the places that we have been. And that's where they fly them out of Creech, and that's where our operators are that are bombing sometimes innocent, mostly innocent.
Yeah, they're not
civilians.
Actually flying from there,
but they're operating.
But they're remotely controlled, so all the people that are killing people with drones in the Middle East are working an hour north of Las Vegas.
Yeah, and
you're being reasonable, at least having the conversation.
Dave's little inputs here for us. Our producer Dave, he's been working hard on our little clips. But yeah, and every year they have what's called the Desert Peace Walk, and Code Pink and Nevada Desert Experience, and a ton of groups. Kelly and I went out there this last time and participated in some of the protesting out at Creech. They come from all across the nation to protest the Air Force workers that are, droning other countries. But
Well, Nevada Desert Experience is a peace group that's faith-based, but they're not one specific faith, but they work a lot with Catholic Worker. And then Code Pink, I think most people know who that is. They do peace protests, and they do quite a lot of where they actually sneak on the stage and confront people. And they work a lot through faith-based groups, and it's actually a pretty big protest that they have out there. They have 2 or 3 a year, but they have, when they do the peace walk, then they have at the end, they all step across the line, and a bunch of people get arrested.
Yeah, and they camp out there. They camp out there for like a week, I think it is, or a few days at least. And people come in and out. We didn't get to camp out there, but we drove out there and spent some time. It was really exciting. So city, I believe it was city at the time. I'm getting them. Yeah, I think it was county actually. I don't know. One of them back then.
There's not actually a big difference here in Vegas.
Right. They were voting on making Nevada one of the 6 drone testing sites. So we had gone down there and gotten a group together just as activists and people involved politically that wanted to stop this from happening. They couldn't promise us that it would just be, They kept trying to sell the story that these drone tests would be used in a private way, and later on it had nothing to do with military, and they wouldn't be used to, work against the people, and they kind of, made fun of us in our tinfoil hats in a way. And that was our first experience really with being at city and county, and we weren't really Southern Nevada Watchdogs yet, but that's how it formed. We went down there for that, and we decided when we were there, we were looking at the agenda, and it was like, holy shit, there's a lot of stuff on here that we should be fighting and paying attention to. They hold these meetings here every 2 weeks, and they vote on major stuff. It's crazy how 7 people can have control and make huge decisions, health decisions, money decisions, life decisions for over 2.5 million people almost, I think we're at now here in Las Vegas. So, that's insane to me. And at first I thought, Southern Nevada Watchdogs, we were doing pretty good. And we bring awareness and try to get people involved. But it's almost impossible. That those meetings are kind of like a dog and pony show. The decisions are already made. The deals have been made. And they want those monies for bonding and, revenues. So they need to make those laws and enforce different things. But that's what got me into doing Jury Rights Day and how I met Kelly, and then I started trying to participate with their events as much as I could. And we would also, as Southern Nevada Watchdogs, Melissa and I would do different protests with the fluoride in our water here in Clark County. We are against that. Even if you believe in that kind of stuff, we don't feel like our money should be paying for something like that, when if you want fluoride or chemtrails, right. you can go get that yourself.
Well, I like the justification for fluoride is that I want my kids to have good teeth, and it's like, well, tell them to brush.
Right, and and that's not a true statement anyhow, and that just shows that they have not done their homework on fluoride and what it actually does to the body. It's a neurotoxin, and it's really harming our citizens here in Clark County. And I plan to do some more activism on that and bring some more awareness. I had talked to some people recently about bringing that back up. I hope we do, because we spend $900,000, I think it's $600,000 to $900,000 in Clark County alone to fluoridate our water. This is not the natural mineral. This is the fertilizer byproduct. So we're paying all this money to poison ourselves. And if you want that poison, you should just go get it from the grocery store yourselves. But I don't feel like we should have to bathe in it, eat it, drink it, and be just suffocated with this. and the money that it costs to do so. And the way that they passed the vote when they did the vote for fluoridating happened to be when Chris June Kiliani, she's our county commissioner now, but she was in the legislation at the time, and she had, introduced this and helped push it forward. They had put in all the equipment and the whole water treatment system before they even brought it to a vote to the people. And so then when they brought it to a vote, it was pretty much like, well, we've already got it in, so let's just keep doing it. I feel like if the public were truly aware, they would not really want this in their water. And another thing is that we are the only county in the state of Nevada that has to fluoridate their water. No other county in Nevada has done it. And in fact, in Reno, they keep voting it down. The government keeps trying to push it on to them. And the people there keep voting it down over and over since I believe it was 2009. They've been voting it down and saying nope. So just different things like that is what I am interested in and have been doing and kind of evolving with, is anything that impedes on our liberties. And I totally believe that my body's my right, and you can do what you want with yourself as long as you're not hurting anybody else or stealing from them. I really don't care. I just want us to figure out a way to educate people and bring awareness to what's really happening. I think that's my passion now mostly, is to just educate the regular citizens to get involved and pay attention. Like, the wool is being pulled over our eyes. But I do have hope, because I have people like Kelly and Dave and all my friends that are big-time activists here in town, doing good things and working hard. I think a lot of appreciation doesn't get told to the ones that do this kind of thing a lot, but I appreciate not being the lone wolf out there by myself. I have good people to stand with me, so that's fun.
She makes a good wolf, though. She's very good with all the stuff that she brings up, and I always go on, if I'm busy or something and I don't have time to scour the papers, I just go to the Southern Nevada Watchdog Facebook page and just scan down, and I can always find 3 or 4 stories.
Hey, that's a cold ass honky.
That's my theme song there.
Kelly is a cold ass honky.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep. That's actually on the back of my robe.
You have a robe that says that. That's
yes.
Cool. Is it velvety?
Yep.
Nice. Yeah, so I guess in general, just to let our audience and new listeners know, and people that don't know us, we are activists that truly care about making a difference in our community, and we don't want to rule over you, and we don't want any rulers either. So, we just kind of bring people awareness, and then we try to support. I notice, both of us, we do try to support other groups doing their things. I think that's important in our community, is to share our friends and even just other activists that we know events, and try to show up when we can, because we all know how hard it really is to fight for what we believe in. So when we can find things that we agree with each other on, to support them, and I think that's...
Yeah, well, that's part of the reason that we started the A Cafe originally way back in 2008, was just to give different groups a opportunity to meet up and, conspire with each other and get stuff done. And I think that's important, especially in Vegas. For some reason in Vegas, it's there's 12 tea parties, but that's because everybody wants to be president. So if you're not president, you start another one.
So true. That's one thing I can't stand in activism and even politics is everybody wants to be top dog and they want to have their name on the show or whatever. It's can't we just if we agree, why can't we all just work together? You have your group, so let's just all do it. But it's very hard too, because I don't work with certain people in town, as you guys know.
I mean, it's important to find people you want to work with, but it's also important to figure out who the people you don't want to work with are.
Yes.
And I always think, like, if there's not like a fundamental issue that I can't deal with somebody, then I'm willing to work on the common issues, even if I don't agree, economically or, if you're a libertarian, I think it's
We
sad
can work it out.
Yeah, I think it's sad that you're, wasting so much energy on stuff that really isn't going to have that much of a difference, or, on a politician who's not going to get elected anyway. But I'll work with you as long as you're not like a, horrible racist or a warmonger, like a neocon that's pretending to be a libertarian.
Yeah, you have to draw the line with who you work with, I believe. And I believe that, if we know that somebody in the movement or whatnot is, I don't want to say a shill or an infiltrator, but if they're a destruction to it, then I think that we need to let other people know so they can be aware and not have it happen to them. There are quite a few faketivists and opportunists in this, I don't want to say industry, I guess community of what we do.
Well, they also have, the cops have come up with a pretty good method of way they go in, and it's not always that somebody's an informant or that they're even talking with the cops and giving them information, which a lot of people they do that and they don't even realize they're an informant,
right? Because
they think the cops want to be their buddy and really they're just pumping them for information. But the thing about that is there are a lot of people that they are actually working with the political parties. They're either working with the Democrats or the Republicans, and it's really obvious with the Democrats. They will set up groups and they try to create what looks like a protest. Yeah. It's a fake grassroots and it's fake protest.
Yep.
And what they're doing is, first of all, they're trying to recruit people either to one of the unions, usually culinary, or they're trying to recruit people to the Democratic Party.
Mm-hmm. Fucking unions are a bunch of fucking...
Nice.
Right?
Yeah. It's true. And, I was reading an article that happens not just here. It's pretty bad in the United States, but it happens in other countries. They'll do fake grassroots movements and make it look like one side is actually doing something when it's not the actual grassroots. That kind of happened in the Ron Paul movement. I got my first taste of that. You had your Ron Paul grassrooters, and then you had like the political people involved running the campaign, and even people kind of in between and thought both sides were good and great and groovy. But the grassroots was really against the actual campaign of Ron Paul. It was always headbutting, and we were always getting, sideswiped in the end and stopped by the campaign of actually going forward and making a difference. And that's when I decided, no matter what you do, you're going to be stopped if you try to work from the inside. But I want us to go to a break here, and when we come back, we will talk about the pep rally that Kelly and I went to a couple weekends ago that the cops here in town held. It was called...
Copsuckers ball.
The copsuckers. No, that's what Kelly wants to call it, and I think it's a great name.
That's unofficial right now.
It's the unofficial name, but it was called like Back the Blue Line and Back the Badge pep rally for police wives, and we have some clips and things that we want to discuss from our it got intense there for a minute event that we attended.
It started out for a minute. They didn't appreciate King Ron's commentary on his video.
Yeah, but we'll get to all of that here after this break. So just listen to these following clips for a bit, and we'll be back.
With me, I have a little over 400 signatures from the citizens of Clark County.
We, the taxpayers, continue to throw money at the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department without hesitation, without...
Shiny badges don't grant extra rights.
I asked you not to film me, sir.
And I said, no, I have a right to film you.
No, you don't have the right to film me.
Yeah, you do have a right to film in public.
You're in a public area.
Yeah. filming?
You can do
Do
an
I have a
interview
right
with
to
us.
film or do I not have a right to
You
film?
can film, sir, but when you invade someone's personal space and shove a camera right in their face, literally it is in their face.
He's stuff to him.
Okay?
We have it on video.
If you step up to
We're
me,
here to ensure that everybody has their rights. Okay?
Right.
You have your rights. These
so
people have their
explain
rights.
to him I have a right, and he stepped up
Yes,
to me.
the minute he feels that you're intruding on his personal space, he's a citizen right now, okay? I'm an officer. You want to shove a camera in my face? Please do that all day long. I'll be more than
So
happy to talk to you.
nobody shoved a camera in his face.
He stepped up to me and created the distance.
Yep.
I did not create the
You
distance.
can't decide that he's
Explain to
invading
him
his
that
space
he
from
did not
across
come
the
up to
street.
me.
You have to actually be invading somebody's
I didn't
space.
see anybody blowing you, sir.
Absolutely.
So
You
yeah,
guys
you can
never
film
see
us all you want, okay?
No, he's threatening anybody.
Okay?
Wow, way to make up stuff.
There we go. We have it on film. So when the film goes out there, we'll see
Good,
who steps
cops
up.
lie.
And after I explain it.
Cops' lies matter.
Yep.
Take care.
Exactly. And the right to film. I exercise my rights.
While we're here, do you guys really believe that there's a war on cops in Las Vegas right now?
Would anybody like to answer that?
I think the community's great. I think we have wonderful relationships with the community and they support us.
Okay, so you don't feel like there's a war on cops. Awesome.
I do not.
I'm glad.
I don't know.
What do you think about all the shootings that have happened where cops weren't held accountable?
You know, you should ask the district attorney's office about that.
We have.
So,
But you don't have an opinion about that? You don't believe that justice should be served for those people?
I think justice should be served to everybody. And I think we do that here.
Do you believe badges grant extra rights?
Absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely.
So when those police were parked in that road right there for your protest, so there was a photo op, that wasn't extra rights or
The
anything
police
like
were
that?
actually parked right there because they stopped a drunk individual here, and then a media van stopped in front of them. That's what those vehicles were here for. And you notice they're not here anymore. So,
Right.
That's interesting. Hey, could you please explain to me what they mean by the thin blue line?
you know, I'm not sure. I didn't coin that phrase. I don't know what it means.
Have you ever used it?
I have not.
Have you ever seen it on police cars?
It's on all the shirts. Do you guys know what that means?
And it's on the shirts. And
And it's on all your media stuff for this event.
And you have no idea when it's on your own media stuff.
I'm not wearing that. It's not my media site, so I
Do you know
recommend.
who came up with to put that slogan on the shirts and all the media
I have no
stuff?
idea.
I'm just wondering, 'cause that kind of perpetuates stuff, don't you think?
I couldn't tell you. I don't even know.
Do either of you have an opinion on what the thin blue line means? No opinions at all?
You should probably introduce yourself.
Very good. How about you, ma'am? No opinion? How about to support the police? Do you know what the thin blue line means? Would you like to explain it? You know what it means?
It's supporting your officers.
Yeah, in a way, yeah.
Very good. Now, during other protests, I've been here, I noticed that the police keep the stairways clean, and that you guys are here, and there were people in the stairways at the time, and you didn't see them. And you didn't see
I don't
them.
see any. There's no one on the stairway right now. So.
Right, and you didn't see the people on the stairways earlier. You didn't see them. If you did see them, you would have cleared them off, because that's your job.
I don't use this building. There's this gentleman right here.
Okay. And you, sir, if there was people playing on the steps, when I've been here at other protests and see people on the steps, you would remove them from those steps. Is that correct?
Do they have a permit to use it?
No, sir, I am not.
No, it's open to the public.
You know what the property lines are?
It's right there.
Yeah, it's right there at the edge of the street.
No, actually, it's right there at the pole.
No, this is all our property here.
Can you please answer the question about the steps then? I'll ask you again. Is it your job to clear the steps so people here don't members of this board before. Are you going to do it? Do you obey the rules? Only when it's
Intimidation package?
Soothing color.
Yeah, right. They have the word love.
Look at this.
It's like this right here, like a calm.
No, actually we don't. We just want to ask you questions.
We come here all the time. We know the property lines.
Okay, well,
Trust us, we know.
he's actually working here. He has the permit for it. He says the property line for you guys is the sidewalk. So all of this is a permitted area. Okay, so he's asking you to go onto the sidewalk. We'd ask that you guys
Now,
comply.
you can either move or we can remove you because you are trespassing. Please
Well,
move.
what makes me part of the protest?
You are not part of the protest.
How is that? Is it open to the public?
Please move.
No, I'm asking you, then how do I become part of the protest?
You are a counter protester. You need to move.
I'm just asking questions. I'm media, I'm press.
Ma'am, move all of us off the property, please.
Don't touch me.
Please move off the property.
Don't touch me.
Move off the property.
Don't put your fucking hands on me.
Okay, you either move off the property or I will detain you. Move off the property. No, the property line is
Where's the press? I'm filming.
Okay, great.
Thank you. You can stand out there.
Right here all day.
No, outside the property line. Sir, move off the property, please. Nope,
Honestly,
right here.
we're not trying to just cause
Right
a
here.
disturbance.
Headline.
We want to ask the real
Right here,
questions that
Sarah.
the actual citizens want to know, not
We got you.
family and friends of
We got you
blocks.
now on film.
The citizens of
That's two
Southern
people.
Nevada, Watchdogs, Las Vegas. We don't want it to be us versus them. We want to know what's going on, and we want you guys to also be held accountable. How many times Facebook looking me up? How many times has a cop been held responsible for shooting a citizen? Unrealistically and unjustifiable. Never has a cop in Metro been held accountable. Don't you think that's a problem?
Criminals are held accountable all the time. Cops are never.
Held accountable.
Not one single time in the entire history of the city.
That big blue line is on your shirt. Do you even know what that means? You had to Google it. You don't even know what that means, but you're perpetuating the us versus them.
Come on.
All we did was come down here.
Come on.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
We haven't done nothing to the
We
family.
don't do anything violent. We never have violent anything. We film the police. We ask questions. And believe it or not, the citizens do have a problem.
I have compassion
right
for
now.
people that
We
get
all
murdered
do.
by cops,
It's
for one
going
thing.
on nationwide.
But we didn't come
And
here
the
to
way
start
you
trouble.
guys
People started
react
trouble with
just
us.
perpetuates
All we did was walk come down here.
And be part of this.
We
If you're
were.
against it, then don't come, right?
Does that help?
That's easy enough.
That's work?
We just came down here to observe.
It has? When in history has that worked? Tell me a
Are you a
time.
police officer by any chance?
So you don't think
Majority
there?
of the people here are either police officers, friends of family of police officers that came to support the police today?
I do.
Does it make you wonder why there's not more citizens down here supporting?
I think they might get shot at by some asshole.
Oh, I think,
So you're saying the cops might shoot then?
I think it probably didn't get promoted out quite as much in the public.
So-
It's kind of a last.
so let me ask you-
I think with the families. Hold on. With the families that were joining together, and it started with the Metro Wives Club that initiated this. So it was projected to be a family and support of the families to come out in reference to that. So in all honesty, I think that's the reason why you're not seeing a whole lot of citizens or maybe other people that would support us.
But you did put it out there and they didn't show up. And do you know who brought up the thin blue line?
Do you guys actually understand that when you don't hold somebody accountable, like people, first of all, they fear you because they know you can murder them and get away with it every single time. And secondly, it creates hostility and it gets people in the community not wanting to work with you guys.
Sure, I would agree 100%.
So do you guys,
I would agree 100%.
I mean, like on a personal level, do you feel that there's a war against cops? All this stuff
Personally,
like all this rhetoric
it's
that's been
difficult
going
for
around?
me to see. So obviously, here's the deal, right? The media's picked up on this, right? And we're seeing a lot of cops shot. Cops do get shot.
You know
It's
that.
part of the profession.
You know
it's
that
part of the job.
this
It's a
year is on
dangerous
pace
job.
to be one of the safest years ever for cops.
Well, hold on a minute. Some of the safest years for crime in the United States, right? So that's the truth.
But at the
That's a-
podcast,
it's
you were
also-
just saying that it wasn't the safest.
The record
cops
lowest
shot.
ever was 2013, and 2015 is on pace to break that for
For cops
police
being shot?
being
Or
shot
killed.
on duty.
Okay. And
So maybe it's.
okay.
I mean,
Is the media building up a lot? Sure.
you know,
If you were a cop and cops were getting killed and that was your profession, you'd be concerned about it, right?
except that if it wasn't actually happening.
Well,
The way
I
that people are
can tell
making
you
it out
this.
to be.
I was just out on the last 3 events
You know-
that our cops got shot, and I've been out on several. So they do get shot. You know,
You know how many cops
it is
have been?
true. It's
You
not
know
a
how many
lie.
cops have been killed by? I mean, not car
Bad
accidents
guys in
Las
Vegas
Vegas
or-
in the history of the city. since 1911 when it was founded.
I don't know the exact number shot, but one that have died, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
It's 5.
That I know of exactly.
It's 5, and one was off duty.
Okay.
It had nothing to do with him being a cop.
Well, which one was that?
That was the guy who they robbed him while he was working on his car in the garage.
In the garage when he came home from work in Nettleton?
Yeah.
Well,
you know how many cops have been, how many people have been killed this year by cops?
Sure.
It's 11.
Do you agree with the new system?
No. No, it's a joke.
From the old coroner's inquest, or no?
The coroner's inquest, the reforms that they created were better. It still wasn't good, but it was much better. And once the union tried to do their lawsuit to get it overthrown and they got defeated, they just went in and threw it out and made something that was completely worse. It's it's basically a kangaroo court. They go and tell you why they didn't charge somebody. They don't present the evidence. They don't do either side of it. They just put out the police byline. It's not.
It's our
no,
system.
It's true. That's a fact.
It's our system. It's
Have you been to one of those?
Yeah. Been here a long time.
And
did you see? By talking to you now, I'm not a bad guy. What do you think?
Yeah.
What do you think? You see, by talking to you now, I got you. We're not pissed off and going against these people, because that's not.
We weren't pissed off and going against anybody at all.
Somebody started something with him.
I'm sure they would.
That's
right? Look, let me tell you a little story, right?
You did a fine job of de-escalating.
Of course, this is what I did. This is what I did. This is what I did. Listen. Let me tell you a story Let me tell you a story one time, right? 9/11 just happened. It's the anniversary of 9/11, and the guy's burning an American flag out in front of New York down here, right? Just causing all kind of shit. And he gets a whooping, right? You didn't see that coming? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not whether it's wrong or right, right? But I pretty much, and all of us could have projected and went, yeah, that's probably what's going to happen, right?
Well,
yeah, there's a good chance if you're doing something to inflame people, they're going to become inflamed.
Of course, right? Of course.
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
You should
anyway,
expect
my
that.
name's Paul. So I don't mind ever talking to you guys about anything.
I'm Tasha the Tyranny Terminator.
We may,
I'm sorry?
Ding.
Tasha the Tyranny Terminator.
we may never agree, you know.
Well, we might.
Listen, I mean,
But on a lot of things, we might,
Now-
believe it or not.
you know we have a website, right? And you could go on there and anonymously post anything that you see that you might not want to report in the way of
To
police
anybody
brutality.
else, yeah.
And you
I've
can do it
gone through
anonymously.
before, so.
And I mean,
You
it
can
only
submit
strengthens
stuff.
your own.
Well, I'll tell you.
You can submit stuff.
Okay.
If you disagree with something that I wrote on there, you're welcome to submit it.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
A rebuttal of it.
Listen, I'm a firm believer in, you got your beliefs, I got mine, and we
But
may not
beliefs aren't
agree.
facts.
See, the thing about it that
we may not agree.
some
but,
people don't understand is accountability is for you guys too.
Of course it should.
Because
And there
people are
should be.
shooting at cops because cops have been shooting at people.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
not because people have been watching videos.
I don't honestly, firmly, fully believe that. At least in this city, I don't. I haven't seen that here. So when you say there's a war against cops right now in Las Vegas, I don't think so.
But
Okay,
the
I
day
haven't seen
before,
it.
they did release
now,
and say that
again,
there
I'm
was
not-
a war.
And that
Chicago,
hyping that up
Detroit,
and getting
other
cops on
places.
edge
Yeah.
is going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Well, I mean, it could be a problem, right?
Yeah.
I would agree 100%, right? What do you think's going on in briefings right now? The cops the sheriff didn't say, right, double up, right? We want everybody to be safe. We've gone through things, concerns. Remember, it wasn't that long ago. 2 of our guys got whacked,
Yeah.
right? So,
But I mean, see, the problem with that is when you guys are like, "Oh my God, cops are being killed," and cops are going through people's neighborhoods, killing them all the time and harassing them and treating them.
I could see that
people
might be a concern.
have a tendency not to be
Are
as
the
sympathetic.
cops going to be on edge now? Do we need to worry that they're going to, be quicker to trigger because of it? I could see how somebody would think that. Firmly, I believe that no, our officers are trained really well. And I don't think that. Most are. We've had bad apples, right? Everybody does.
But
they've been everywhere.
you guys know,
They've been everywhere. I've worked with a lot.
But you know the origin
I've
of
seen a lot
that
come and go.
term, right?
I've seen a lot come and go.
You know the origin of bad apples, right? They spoiled a bunch.
Well, that's
It's
true.
not an excuse to leave them.
Right. I mean, right? If there's not proper supervision, rampart divisions,
So,
come up and things.
He's
get
just a
crazy.
bad apple isn't a
Sure.
justification to not take action against people. Or to,
I didn't quite follow you on that one.
the phrase is a bad apple spoils the bunch.
Right.
So if you leave the bad apple in the barrel, the whole barrel goes bad.
It corrupts all of them.
I got you.
So saying, oh, it's just a bad apple.
Well,
You know,
I don't.
It should be,
I
that
don't
guy's a
think-
bad apple, we got to get him out of there.
Well, I think that's been the case. I think we've had bad apples, and I think we've gotten rid of quite a few. I mean, I know that we have, right? I know that we have.
Which-
I worked IA for a long time, too.
Can you name
I've-
one
I've done
cop
a lot.
who's ever been put on trial for murdering somebody? Or even for for any crime?
I can. You know, he went to prison.
It's the guy that did the drive-by,
Yeah.
and the feds did that. It wasn't Metro.
Metro-
And that's because the other guy who actually did the shooting turned him in to get himself
Well,
saved.
that might be your belief, right?
Yeah,
might be
that
your
is my belief, yes.
Okay.
But it's not because Metro came and cracked down on him. It's because he turned the other guy in.
Well,
And that's
you know,
one example.
well, you asked for one. You know,
Right.
So
Okay.
yeah, there was one.
Can you say two?
Right, there was one. I don't know about
Are
it.
you familiar with Jesus Arevalo?
Who's it?
Jesus Arevalo? It might be Arevalo. I'm not sure exactly how pronounced his name.
I know. I've
He's
heard
the guy that
name, but I'm not
murdered
positive.
Stanley Gibson.
Okay.
Do you know what happened with him?
What? I know he's not working anymore. Right. I think he was fired from this.
In sorta, he was technically fired. They
Well,
gave
I
him-
don't think he works for us anymore, so I
Right.
think he did. And I
But
don't think
what-
he resigned. I think he was terminated.
Right.
I believe. But
Well,
I'm not positive
but
with that.
they
specifics
dragged
on
their
that day.
feet until he put in his paperwork for disability a week before he got fired. He's collecting $30,000 a year now on disability. You know what his disability is?
No idea.
People were calling him a murderer after he killed Stanley Gibson, and that stressed him out. You see how that might not resonate with the public and Stanley Gibson's family?
I think he felt it was more his department went against him than it was the public went against him, so to speak.
But you don't think, even if, if we boil this down and say it was like negligence, like he didn't intentionally do it, but okay, he did something that cost somebody their life.
Right.
You don't think he should be held accountable for that?
No, I do.
Because if I was working in a kitchen somewhere and
No, don't start that with me.
I'm going to start that with you
really?
because
really, cop,
if I was
24 years,
working,
what I've seen, what people get
if
sentenced
I was
to,
working in a
with how
factory,
much time prison time's really done for some things, really, don't start me on
I'm
that
gonna
one,
start.
my friend.
I mean,
you know what I mean?
you can.
I'll tell you this.
You can start
I'll
too,
tell you
but I'm
this.
going to start.
Government officials,
If I
the
was-
cops, and everybody else probably do a little bit more time than the average person would.
Really?
Or if it's a high-profile.
So if I was working in a factory,
I don't know.
and I hit the wrong button, and a guy that was working on the conveyor line got thrown into a machine and died, you think I would they'd just be, okay, you can go, you're all right.
No, the chicken fat fryer guy or whatever it was, no.
That guy probably didn't get disability for the rest
I
of
don't
his
know.
life.
I don't know. Is he in prison?
I'm not sure.
So. I mean, he's probably not going to. I'm sure he's not going to have a job there anymore, right?
I should hope not.
Mistakes happen, whether or not it was a negligent mistake or, and you got to know the specifics of everything. So. All right, well, good talking to you guys.
Alrighty.
I've tried to defuse a little bit there.
reasonable and at least having the conversation, unlike some.
Accountability is good for
Fair enough.
everybody. Remember that.
Yeah.
It's good for you guys too.
What was your name again?
Paul.
Paul, your officer Paul?
When you guys create fear and hostility in the community, it makes your job harder
Yeah.
and more dangerous.
All right, you guys take care.
You too.
When I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips that I am a revolutionary. And you're going to have to keep on saying that. You're going to have to say that I am a proletarian. I am the people.
With Radical Anarchist Radio Revolution. We're going to talk about this part of the show. We're going to be discussing a few clips from that pep rally and a few different things that Kelly and I want to talk about. So, Kelly, what's the first one we're going to discuss?
Yeah, well, so the first one we actually have could be the one where they, we don't have to go a whole lot into this, but kind of the beginning of when the conversation started was when one of the cops started trying to almost physically attack King Ron, who is one of the people we have there and who does quite a lot of filming with Nevada Cop Block. He's also part of Food Not Bombs and a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah, and first we should tell you what happened. So we had, I guess Kelly saw it on Twitter. They had a flyer out that had, back the blue, back the badge and back the blue line kind of flyer. And it was a rally for police wives. They had put it to the public to come support them. So we had heard about it, and we decided that we would go down there and actually question them was just our thing. We weren't going to cause, any, violence or, hurt anybody or anything like that. But when we walked up, it was just me, King Ron, and Kelly at first. And, of course, Kelly and King Ron have their Cop Block shirts on, which were awesome. And so they kind of spotted us right on. And a couple of them came up to us. We just, stood politely there around a group. There was probably, I guess, about 70, would you say, at
There's
most?
some dispute. King Ron said 100, but the newspaper said 70.
Yeah,
I thought maybe
would
about
say
75
50 or so. They had children and whatnot, so that kind of filled the crowd a bit. But it was all, it was not citizens. They were police wives, families, and police officers, all there. There were no actual citizens that seemed to be there in support of.
Well, that's one of the things about it is this whole thing was supposed to be a rally to show how much the public supports the cops in Las Vegas. And the public didn't show up. That's the first thing. The 70 people there were either cops, retired cops, or the family of cops. There was the only public that showed up was Nevada Cop Block and Southern Nevada Watchdogs. So it was really, that's not what they intended, but that's actually a pretty good showing of what the public thinks of the police here in Las Vegas. Everybody I talk to has a bad opinion of them. Unless they're, somehow affiliated with the cops.
Yeah.
And even the ones then are like, well, there's some bad ones, and they try to do that whole, there's only a couple good ones, or there's only a couple bad ones, so everybody else is good. But even they acknowledge that Metro's done, horribly bad stuff.
Right. So when we were standing there, it was me, you, and King Ron, and they were actually handing out donuts at the cop rally, which we thought was hilarious, especially me. I think I snorted.
We have video evidence
about
of that.
But I just found it funny, and they came over and they were trying to, I guess, show that they were being nice, but it was in a totally not, very. This is the donut clip. Have some donuts. That's when they were handing out donuts. But they came over to us. A lady came over to us and offered us water and donuts and a balloon even at one point. 'Cause they had these blue star balloons to represent a badge, I guess. And we didn't want any of that.
Yeah, they actually, I think, they actually did it right. The approach they had at first, because they were, I know it was probably begrudging, but they came over and hey, do you want some donuts? They didn't offer me a T-shirt, which I was thinking about taking just for the sake of having. But they were doing that. The only time there was really any kind of negative involvement with that was when we had King Ron had started to question one of the women about that she supports the badge, and he was asking her, well, do you come to protests that are anti-police brutality? And she got really short with him, and it was no, this is what I support.
Yeah, and she said, I don't support people like you.
Yeah. So that was really the only, they tried to, you can tell when somebody's,
fake,
biting their tongue, but
yeah.
But nobody actually said anything. They did their little group picture, which it was funny because what it was, Channel 8 was there to record, the everything. And Channel 5 was there. I think Channel 13 was there. But Channel 5 went to do a group picture to show the massive rally they had. And they had to, like, literally do a thin blue line. They had to do one person in a row all the way across to make it look like there was more people there because they only had, maybe 70 people.
Right.
And there's 3,000 police employees in Las Vegas, in Metro alone. So the fact that they can only draw 70 of their own people says a lot about stuff.
It sure does. So what started kind of the drama is our friend King Ron was videotaping, and beforehand when Kelly and King Ron and I were just standing there and Jason Ellis came up too, we were just standing kind of in our little circle discussing, random stuff. And there was a couple, it was obviously a cop and his wife, and she was like taking pictures of us, like she got us, she got our photo, kind of thing. And I just kind of laugh like, we don't care.
They always think that bothers us, which
right.
It is actually like an implied threat because
right.
what they're saying is, I'm going to show this to all my buddies, and if they see you out there, they're going to stop you.
Right. It's an intimidation tactic. So I took my camera and started blatantly shooting my camera back at her and him, and they got kind of pissed. Well, like not 2 minutes later, I look over and I hear King Ron, like, Kelly, and we walk over and he is there with that dude, that same guy, is right up in King Ron's face. Like, they are chest to chest, and King Ron is holding his little iPad, like, very close to his chest and filming. He doesn't even have his arms extended, he has it close to his body and he's filming, and the man is insisting that he is not allowed to film him in public. Yeah. So it kind of started a whole thing where confrontation.
It's actually amazing. It's gotten a lot better, obviously, since 2010 when Cop Block started, but there are still, even today, there's a lot of cops that don't realize that you're allowed to film them, or even if just that you're allowed to film in public, because I think that's one of his things is he thought you could film him when he's a cop, because King Ron even mentioned, like, afterwards he was like, we were discussing how he had called him a citizen. He's a citizen now.
Yeah, he's out of uniform. He's a citizen now. He's not a cop now.
I don't remember exactly what, but King Ron said something about that.
So let's play the clip and hear what went down a little bit and see.
Please do that all day long. I'll be more than happy to talk to you.
Nobody shoved a camera in his face.
Okay. He stepped up to me and created the distance problem. I did not create it.
You can't decide that he's invading his space from across the street. You have to actually be invading his space.
I didn't see anybody going.
Absolutely.
So yeah, you can film us all you want. Okay?
Nobody's threatening anybody.
Okay?
Wow, way to make up stuff.
There we go. We have it on film. So when the film goes out there, we'll
Good,
see who steps
cop
up.
fly.
And after I explain it.
Cop flies matter.
Yep.
Take care.
Exactly. And the right to film. I'm exercising my rights.
While we're here, do you guys really believe that there's a war on cops in Las Vegas right now?
Would anybody like to answer that?
I think the community's great. I think we have wonderful relationships with the community, and they support us. So.
Okay, so this guy's threatening me.
No, I asked you not to film me, sir.
And I said, no, I have a right to film you in public.
No, you don't have the right to film me.
Yeah, you do have a right to film in public.
You're in a public area.
Officer working here, okay? If there's family members here, what are you doing?
I'm filming.
You can do it.
Do I have a right to film or do I not have a right to film?
You can film, sir, but when you invade someone's personal space and shove a camera right in their face, literally in their face.
You stepped to him.
Okay?
We have it on video.
Did you step up to me?
We're here to ensure that everybody has their rights, okay?
Right.
You have your rights.
So explain to him I have a right, and he stepped up to me.
The minute he feels that you're intruding on his personal space, he's a citizen right now, okay?
Absolutely.
I'm an officer. You want to shove a camera in my face? Please do that all day long. I'll be more than happy to talk to you.
Nobody shoved a camera in his face.
He stepped up to me and created the distance problem. I did not create it.
You can't decide that he's invading his space. You don't think, even if, like, so.
Was that on the end of that? Okay, I clipped up all the audio, and I'm not an audio expert, so that's why there's...
You did your best.
The extra at the end. But that shows the thing about it is what's going on there is King Ron had been basically assaulted by this cop because he got right up in his face. And then the other cop came over. Actually, King Ron actually called him over.
Yeah.
I've talked to him about not calling the cops several times, but me and him have a bit of a philosophical disagreement with that. But so the other cop came over and helped King Ron by backing up the first cop.
Of course, because we have to back the blue line. That's what our rally's about that day, duh.
And the funny thing about it, and one of the things that shows how the cops operate, is he accuses King Ron of getting in the other guy's face. If you watch the video, you'll see that guy jump up into King Ron's face.
Yeah, he was very aggressive about it, too. And I was like, holy shit. And so we started questioning them while we had them there. One of the officers was in uniform, and that's the one that King Ron, called over. And we started questioning them. You can hear the questions in the clip. And they were kind of like nonchalant, and then they got upset with us and were requesting that we move, that we could not no longer be on that property, that we were not there in this protest, and that we had to move across the line off the property because we were not part of this public protest, by the way, on a public sidewalk.
Which I was actually surprised that they called it a protest, because it was supposed to be like a support rally, and so I guess they're protesting that people don't like cops.
Yeah, at one point they called over, it was at the federal courthouse downtown in Las Vegas, and they ended up, the uniformed police officer called over the federal courthouse security guard, and the security guard physically, was trying to move me over, and I got a little pissed about that. I was like, don't fucking put your hands on me. And at that moment I was like, well, is it worth it? We were surrounded. So it started off, these cops were just standing there. King Ron walks over to them and films them. There was maybe 3 or 4 of the cops, and Kelly and I are over just a few feet away or whatnot. And then we go over to start filming. Once we start filming and asking questions, a crowd starts forming behind the cops. And at first, I'm like, oh, they're just trying to get in the camera because they could see that we're filming and whatnot, and they just wanted to be in the frame. And then as it goes on, I turn around, and we are completely surrounded. Me, Kelly, King Ron, and Jason, 4 people are surrounded by the whole crowd, the whole entire group that was at the rally.
70 people.
Yeah, and it was I'm not going to lie, it was a little intimidating at that point. So when the federal security guard was like, you must leave, and he started to put his hands on me, and I was fighting it a bit. I was like, well, is it worth it? He wants us to move 2 feet over the line. So at that point, we moved over across the line.
That was the thing. When that was happening, I know where the actual line is, and it's not.
Me too. Yeah, because we've held
because you're just on the sidewalk, so we could still. I mean, it wouldn't have made much of a difference. So I wasn't worried about moving. But then when he starts fucking with you, then it's well.
Yeah.
If you're gonna get arrested, then I'm probably going with you. So,
Well, and I have to pick and choose. I really don't want to be in jail, and I like my freedom. So, at that moment, I was just like, "Is this worth it? In this argument, will this prove our point?" And I just felt we had to make a good choice there. And I don't know if I made a good choice, but I made the choice to move the 2 feet and move 2 feet across the line. And then at that time, it was very much kind of like a standoff. It was very much like us against them at that point. They gathered up and they lined up against us again. They lined up against us. We were facing off right then against them. And that's kind of when I got pissed.
It does kind of show that, we came there and we weren't, you could say we were being offensive, but really they shouldn't be offended by somebody criticizing them. But so, we came down and they were offended by the fact that we were there first, at all. It's our simple presence was something that would offend them. But we weren't doing anything, and we weren't even actually really questioning them very much. King Ron questioned a couple things, and I know part of it is he narrates when he does his videos, which is funny.
He was probably giving a funny narration.
Right, he was giving he was describing what he was filming, so that cop overheard him, and it wasn't something he wanted to hear. So that's what really started it. But it shows you that they went, straight to violence. And we hadn't even started any sort of confrontation at all, not even, questioning them.
Right. And for the most part, when we walked up, we just stood in our little circle discussing stuff. And Kelly and I kept discussing when we were going to walk over there and start questioning them. But here's what happened after all that. We get lined up kind of after the officer makes us move across the line. And once we have to move across the line over there, we're kind of facing off, and I give them kind
an
of
awesome little speech.
A little speech. I messed up my speech because I was nervous and mad. I was really mad.
And she pointed out that somebody was flipping her off during the speech. I tried to isolate that on the audio, but I couldn't get it.
Yeah, that fucker. That's my thing is, like, we came there, and of course we came there not to, like, support them, but we didn't come there to be violent or, make a scene per se, I guess. But we also didn't come there to pat them on the back. But the thing is they were very aggressive towards us the entire time. And it makes it very much an us versus them thing. They perpetuate this us versus them, and how the reactions are of the people, because the way they act and react to situations, like, they're supposed to be trained to deal with stress and criticism and questions. And if us showing up at a rally caused that much angst and disruptment, then probably they should not be in their positions to do what they do, if they can't handle that little bit. So we're going to go...
Yeah, so we can pretty much just play that video, or the audio from that video. And all these videos are available on YouTube. There's the raw video, which is just everything unedited, so you can look and see what actually happened, and you don't think that I'm, like...
Making it up.
Yeah, I've cut out, like, for time, I've cut out where there's, like, dead spaces or nothing happening. And I've made a couple, like, I took some of the statements and put them, like, at the front to emphasize them. But so I've made a couple kind of creative edits, but
not malicious edits.
I haven't done anything deceptive with the video. And like I said, you can go and watch the raw video to make sure that that's the case, because you can see it unedited.
We want to ask the real questions that the actual citizens want to know, not family and friends and blogs. The citizens of Southern Nevada Watchdogs, Las Vegas, we don't want it to be us versus them. We want to know what's going on, and we want you guys to also be held accountable. How many times Facebook flipping me off? How many times has a cop been held responsible for shooting a citizen? Unrealistically and unjustifiable. Never has a cop in Metro been held accountable. Don't you think that's a problem? We want to ask the real questions that the actual citizens want to know, not family and friends and blogs. The citizens of Southern Nevada Watchdogs, Las Vegas, we don't want it to be us versus them. We want to know what's going on, and we want you guys to also be held accountable. How many times Facebook flipping me off? How many times has a cop been held responsible for shooting a citizen? Unrealistically and unjustifiable. Never has a cop in Metro been held accountable. Don't you think that's a problem?
Criminals are held accountable all the time. Cops are never.
Thanks for being reasonable and at least having the conversation, unlike...
Yeah, that was the end where it was the criminals are held accountable all the time, because that was their only real comeback on Tasha's awesome speech was, what about the criminals? And it's, okay, fine, criminals deserve to be punished, but the thing about it is, if you go out and murder somebody, you get arrested and you get put in prison, even when that's not a cop. It actually happens all the time. So the thing about it is that they actually have a mechanism in place to hold criminals accountable. And, we can argue about whether that's excessive or whether they're abusing that, but it's there. And the cops don't. There's no record of being held accountable. So the thing about it is, it can't be, well, we can't hold cops accountable because criminals aren't being held accountable, because they are. And that's, not an excuse anyway. You should hold all criminals accountable, no matter who they work for.
Exactly. Yeah, And that's a thing that I think that we wanted to, well, I wanted to try to get across in my little speech there, but I kind of fucked it up. It was not a planned speech. I was just so mad at what was happening and how that they were reacting to us just being there. I was so pissed off at, the intimidation tactics that they were using. Like, everything that they were doing is everything that we sit there and bitch about and why we do what we do. So they just perpetuate it, and it just makes me mad that they can't see it.
Well, the other thing about that is, she pretty clearly says at the beginning, we're not trying to have an us against you thing, because that's what the cops really do.
Yeah.
And, we're just asking questions. And if you want to come and talk to us and have a conversation about those questions, then we're more than happy to talk with you. And, if you had some sort of evidence that was going to change what I thought, I had no problem, changing that. It's just that usually their excuses are really bad. They're along the lines of, who's going to pay my bills if I quit, or if I turn somebody in and they fire me.
Right, but at some point we can't accept just doing my job anymore. Like, if your job is that bad and you're doing something to oppress people and murder people and bring them down, then you need to quit your fucking job and be a real man or woman and do something good for the community. Don't sit there and say that you're doing something good behind a badge. Like, your uniform does not make you a fucking good person. In fact, it makes you a bad person, because then you feel like you're above everybody else and you start to act like a dick, and you want to start to have power. Everybody, like, once people, it's just kind of human nature. If you get this power, you want to start taking more and more power over people, and you start to run with it. And especially the kind of people that they hire for cops. But another thing that they had these shirts specifically made for this rally that they held, and it was called, on the shirts, they were blue shirts, and they said back the blue, what did it say?
Back the blue line.
Back the blue line.
I think it said back the badge, but then it said the thin blue line afterwards.
Yeah, it said back the badge and thin blue line. And we kept asking them, do you even know what the thin blue line refers to? Like, do you not understand, like, the way that you're perpetuating things? But they did not. They just said that, we're supporting our police officers, and then
one was looking it up on her phone on the Google.
Yeah, she tried to Google it, and then once she Googled it was hilarious, because, like, I asked her about it, and I said, well, look it up, because she's like, I know it's in support, but let me Google it. And I'm like, okay, do that. And she Googles it, and she's standing right there Googling it, and you could tell she's reading, right? And as she's reading, she slowly starts to, like, walk away, so she no longer has to participate in the conversation and answer that question. I was just like, well, that says it all right there, lady. Like, you couldn't even say it out loud.
Yeah, which I do have another video of the guy from Insert Coins they were beating up, and the cop was like, I don't need to watch the video, and I'm showing it to him on my phone, like, over and over again. I just kept pushing it back to the start, and I'm doing it. He's physically looking the other direction so he won't see it.
Yeah, that's crazy. So another clip that we have, I guess, do you want to play that one, Kelly?
Yeah, well, we have one where I actually asked him, do you believe there's a war on cops? And then, there's a conversation after that about the relative amount of people killed, the cops killed, and by that I don't mean car accidents, I mean actually murdered by people, and the amount of citizens killed by cops.
Do you feel that there's a war against cops? All this stuff
Personally,
like all this rhetoric
it's
that's been
difficult
going
for
around?
me to see. So obviously, here's the deal, right? The media's picked up on this, right? And we're seeing a lot of cops shot. Cops do get shot.
Part
of the profession,
that
part of the job.
this year is on pace
job.
to be one of the safest years ever for cops.
Well, hold on a minute. Some of the safest years for crime in the United States, right? So that's the truth.
But at the
It's also
saying that it wasn't the safest.
the record lowest ever was 2013, and 2015 is on pace to break that for police being shot on duty.
Okay, and
so maybe
okay. Is the media building up a lot? Sure. If you were a cop and cops were getting killed and that was your profession, you'd be concerned about it, right?
Except that if it wasn't actually happening.
Well,
the way
I
that people
can
are
tell
making
you
it out,
this.
I think.
I was just out on the last 3 events that our cops got shot, and I've been out on several. So they do get shot. You know,
You know how many cops have been? You know how many cops have been killed by? I mean, not car
Bad
accidents
guys
in
in
Las
Vegas,
Vegas
or-
in the history of the city since 1911 when it was founded.
I don't know the exact number shot, but one that have died. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
It's 5
that I know of exactly.
It's 5, and one was off duty.
Okay.
It had nothing to do with him being a cop.
Well, which one was that?
That was the guy who they robbed him while he was working on his car in the garage.
In the garage when he came home from work in Nettleton.
Yeah.
Well,
You know how many cops have been? I mean, how many people have been killed this year by cops?
sure.
It's 11.
And so that was the clip of. So this guy comes up. He's an officer. He's in plain clothes though, and this is after our whole.
He was actually like giving me a hard look. He was like staring me down the whole time she was giving her speech. So I thought at first he was going to start some shit, but then he talked to us and he was actually kind of reasonable, and he actually didn't just make up stuff or like refuse to believe stuff that was true. So we were actually able to have a reasonable
conversation.
Yeah, conversation and actual kind of informative. So, it wasn't like we were fighting with him over the facts. Like he was actually willing to accept stuff that was true.
Yeah, I mean, he tried to de-escalate the situation that was at hand, and he was trying to look like, they're not all bad cops, pretty much.
Well, and I have the clip of this, but we can play that at some point. But right before that also, he had a guy with him that came up, and King Ron asked them about why there wasn't more cops here or more members of the public there. And one of the cops was like, they are probably afraid to get shot by some asshole. And then I was like, oh, so you're saying they'd be afraid to get shot by the cops? Because
that's all that was there.
Which is probably pretty true. There's actually probably quite a lot of people that wouldn't have come because they're afraid they'd get shot by the cops. Yeah.
Yeah, the funny thing is those balloons kept popping that they had. They had those balloons, lots of them, and they would randomly pop. Some of the kids would let them go and they'd hit the trees. And Jason Ellis was like, I hope that doesn't set anybody off for PTSD and stuff because, it did sound like gunfire a little bit. But
And the other thing, isn't it illegal to have guns on the property of the courthouse?
Federal courthouse property.
I guarantee you they all had guns.
Yeah, it is, but I'm not sure what the rule is for them. They are above the law, so who knows on that one. Do we have time to play the Bad Apples clip, or should we wait till next time? Okay, let's go ahead and play the Bad Apples clip, if we could.
Most stores. We've had bad apples, right? Everybody does.
But
they've been everywhere.
You guys know
They've been everywhere.
I've
worked with a lot.
But you know the origin
I've
of
seen a lot come
that
and go.
term, right?
I've seen a lot come and go.
You know the origin of bad apples, right? They spoiled a bunch.
Well, that's
It's
true.
not an excuse to leave
No,
them.
right. I mean, right. If there's not proper supervision, rampart divisions,
So, like,
come up and things.
He's
get
just a
crazy.
bad apple isn't a
Sure.
justification to not take action against people. Or to,
I didn't quite follow
I do like that he didn't understand
the,
that.
the phrase is a bad apple spoils the bunch. Right. So if you leave the bad apple in the barrel, the whole barrel goes bad.
It corrupts all of them. I got you.
So saying, oh, it's just a bad apple.
Well, I don't.
It should be, that guy's a bad apple, we got to get him out of there.
Yeah, so the other thing, but on the War with Cops clip that we played, but we actually didn't talk about that a lot. The thing about it is when you get down there, there's 5 cops in the history of Las Vegas that have been killed, been murdered. And one of them was off duty, so his death had nothing to do with the fact that he was a cop. He was just randomly robbed. And so really, there's been 5 cops killed in the 105-year history of Las Vegas. And the other thing that I asked him is how many people have been shot by the cops this year, and it's 11. So the comparison, 5 people in 100-something years, or 11 people so far, in 9 months at that time in Las Vegas. It's like there's no. that's more than double
Yeah,
the amount of cops
there's
killed.
no comparison. There really is. I mean, if anybody wants to say there's a war on anybody, it would be the war on the people of this city with the police. I mean, we're being militarized too. They get bonding and things like that for militarization vehicles. If you look out at Ann Road and Cheyenne, they have that whole complex with different military vehicles there, and that's separate from LVMPD. But you know, we have also the Fusion Center here in town, which, if nobody's familiar with, the Fusion Center actually has Department of Homeland Security, Clark County Fire Department, LVMPD, and I believe the FBI.
I'm sure all the feds are there. FBI,
Hey, damn, that's a cold ass honky.
all of them are, involved in. I don't know if you guys have listened to Nonpartisan Liberty for All radio before, but that's something that they have discussed because one of our good friends, Sean Gruber, had gotten a visit from the Fusion Center.
after posting something on
Facebook. So it's really out of control of what's going on.
Shiny badges don't grant extra rights.
Damn straight.
That's it. We want to ask the real questions. But so the other thing is, so his answer to that was, well, we've had a bunch of bad apples, and then that's where the bad apples part comes in, where the excuse that the cops always use is, oh, that guy was just a bad apple, so it doesn't reflect the entire department. But they don't take action against those people. They use that to justify it, and
the ones who do get fired, the ones that do try to, turn in the bad cops, which I don't know if there are any that have happened in Las Vegas like that, but there around the country there have been stories where you hear other cops trying to turn in other police officers, and they end up getting fired in much retaliation upon.
Yep, and that's the problem is. It goes back to that thin blue line thing. It's like they don't even understand what the connotation of that is, because the bad apples thing has become so common that that's one of the first things people think of when it's police excuses. But that's a negative thing. They make it out like, oh, that's just a bad apple, so it's okay. But the reality of that, the saying of that is, that guy's a bad apple, we should get rid of that guy, not we should excuse that guy's actions and cover it up for him. So that's one of the things I like to point out to cops, when they try with the whole bad apples thing. It's like, that's a bad thing. That's not a good thing.
Right, exactly. But they don't care, and even if they just don't get it, which I don't believe, I believe they just don't care. They like what they do. They like the power that they hold, and they feel, I guess, maybe in their fucked up minds that they're helping people. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and then we should have one more clip there. I'm not sure which one. It should.
Do you know which one? You don't know?
I don't know right now.
Well, we'll skip it this time, and we will just go and have to talk about that next show. We're going to go ahead and wrap up the show here this week. It was a fun first show. Thank you very much, Kelly, for...
and Tasha for being awesome.
Yeah, for being here and doing this show with me. I'm really excited about this, so I hope our listeners hang through the tough times with us and tune in 2 weeks, Monday, to Nonpartisan Liberty for All radio show, and you'll listen.
You should check out Tasha the Tiny Terminator.
Yes.
Southern Nevada Watchdogs.
Yes, check out our website at southernnevadawatchdogs.org. That show, our next show will be October 19th. And then Kelly, do you want to go ahead and give them your information? Where did they can find out where you are and what you're doing next?
Yes, so I am Kelly W. Patterson, and I am with Nevada Cop Block, which is nvcopblock.org. Then I'm also the editor for the National Cop Block site, which can be found at copblock.org. And we're debuting this show on October 19th. What's the next show, though? That's the one we need. But that'll be this.
The fact that it was
But today is October 19th.
recommended that somebody be fired for shooting somebody because they thought his hat was a gun.